Good afternoon. Welcome to the November 12th, 2020 inaugural meeting of the Sunshine Coast Regional District Board. I would like to call the meeting to order at 2:03 p.m. and acknowledge that Sunshine Coast Regional District is within the territory of the Sechelt and Squamish First Nations. Our first order of business will be the election of the chair. The procedure for election of the chair is set out in the Board Procedures Bylaw, which states that at each inaugural meeting, the corporate officer will call for nominations for chair and will conduct a vote by secret ballot. If only one candidate is nominated, that candidate will be declared elected by acclamation. I will call for nominations 3 times. At the close of nominations, if more than one candidate has been nominated, each will be given a maximum of 3 minutes to address the board in favor of their candidacy, and in the order the nominations were received. If an election by voting is required, an election by electronic ballot will be held. Directors have been briefed on the procedure and process to submit an electronic ballot in advance of this meeting. Once the results have been recorded, we will inform the board if there is a successful candidate. A majority of votes of members present is required to elect the chair, which means that one of the candidates must receive at least 5 votes to be elected. If no one receives at least 5 votes, the vote will be repeated. When the voting is repeated, all names will remain on the ballot unless a nominee withdraws. Are there any questions from the board relating to the process? Okay, seeing none, I will call a first time for nominations for the position of chair for the Sunshine Coast Regional District. Director Seegers.
I nominate Lori Pratt, Director from Half Moon Bay.
Director Pratt, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I do accept the nomination. Thank you.
I will now call for nominations a second time. Hearing none, and there being no further nominations, I declare Lori Pratt elected as chair of the Sunshine Coast Regional District by acclamation. Thank you, Chair Pratt. So in accordance with the procedure, I will now pass the meeting over to you to conduct the election of the vice chair.
Thank you very much, Corporate Officer Reed, and thank you very much to the directors for your continued support, and I appreciate the continued opportunity to represent the Sunshine Coast Regional District as your chair. So my first item of business will be the election of the Sunshine Coast Regional District Vice Chair. The election of the Vice Chair will follow the same procedure as the election of the Chair. At the close of nominations, if more than one candidate has been nominated, each candidate will be given a maximum of 3 minutes, a maximum of 3 minutes to address the board in favor of their candidacy and in the order the nominations were received. If an election by voting is required, directors will cast their vote by electronic ballot. A majority of votes of the members present is required to elect the vice chair, which means that one of the candidates must receive at least 5 votes to be elected. If no one receives at least 5 votes, the vote is repeated. When the voting is repeated, all names remain on the ballot unless a nominee withdraws. So with that, I will call a first time for nominations for the position of vice chair for the Sunshine Coast Regional District. Director Ties?
I nominate Alton Toth.
Okay. Director Toth, do you accept the nomination?
I do accept the nomination. Thank you.
Okay. I will now call a second time for nominations. Director Lee.
I'd like to nominate Director Mcmahon, Director for Area E for Vice Chair.
Okay. Director Mcmahon, do you accept the nomination?
I accept.
Okay. Thank you. I will now call for nominations for a third time. There being no further nominations and having received 2 nominations, each candidate will be given a maximum of 3 minutes to address the board prior to an election by ballot. The candidates are Director Alton Toth from the District of Sechelt and Director Donna McMahon from Area E, Elphinstone. So with that, Director Toth, just hang on 1 second. I am going to start the clock for your 3 minutes. So if you can just hang on 1 moment, please. And with that, Director Toth, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. 3 years ago, if you'd told me that I'd be here today, I'd have laughed at you. Not just as a counselor or director of the SCRD, but that I'd even consider putting my name forward as vice chair. Still seems kind of foreign to me, yet here we are today and here we are right now. I asked to be nominated for a couple of different reasons. First of all, I think the municipalities need to maintain a seat at the head of the table. With Director Seegers wishing to step aside, it makes a lot of sense for another municipal director to put their name forward for vice chair. Second, I have capacity, despite also being on council and despite also having businesses to run. As a municipal director who isn't also a mayor, I feel that I've got a lot more bandwidth to deal with any of the additional responsibilities that vice chair may entail, especially hearing from the regular issues that rural directors are having to face in their constituencies that we just don't get in the municipalities. Finally, there is a small component of this that's selfish. Part of this for me is about personal growth. I joked during the campaign period that I'm debilitatingly introverted, yet I felt the issues were such that I had to get involved. I do find myself coming out of that shell somewhat, but COVID has made things increasingly difficult to do. I've told people who ask that there's nothing in the world that would make me want to be chair or mayor, but being sort of adjacent to the top, I'm confident that I can handle that, both the exposure as well as increased responsibilities. Thank you, and that's all I have to say.
Okay. Thank you, Director Toth. With that, we will go over to Director McMahon. It is your turn for 3 minutes for addressing the directors. Okay, when you're ready.
Been some time since I campaigned last, but I think I remember how. First, I'll point out that if the board needs somebody to take on a new hat, look no further. It's been 2 years here, and it would have been a challenging 2 years even without COVID. It's been really something. I think we've come a long way in that time, but there is still a lot on our plates here. While I like to whine about how busy I am actually one of the less overextended people at this table. I feel that I have some capacity to step up and support the chair when she can't be doing 3 things at once. There are a lot of conversations coming up about process and policy, about how the board and staff can work more efficiently, effectively, transparently, and collaboratively, and I'd like to be more involved in that. Traditionally, the chair and vice chair roles at the SCRD have been political in the sense that there was a lot of perceived rivalry, either between the municipalities and the rural areas, or between the southern coast and the northern coast, or maybe, area A versus everybody else. This term, I've been happy that I haven't been hearing that. I think we've been meeting our objective of working together for the good of the whole coast, which is what we have heard that the electorate wants. So in closing, I feel 100% certain that whoever you elect to this role will wake up every morning praying that nothing happens to Lori. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Mann. That's comforting to have so many prayers on my side. Sorry, I trust you to derail my thought process. Okay, so with that, I'm going to pass it over to the corporate officer to start us off on the election process.
Thank you, Chair. So the election has been activated. Directors may now proceed to their electronic ballot via the email link sent to you earlier. Once the results are fully recorded, we will be able to view them. They will be reported by me and also verified by the CAO. Thank you. Also, we ask public's patience as there may be a delay in this new process as we carry it out. Thank you. Chair, could I ask directors to please raise their hand when they think they have finished voting? So I see 8 of 9 ballots have been cast. What I would ask directors to do is to go back. There were 2 emails. One was for the election of the chair and one was for the election of the vice chair. So if you could please go back and revisit your election of the vice chair email. It won't let you vote a second time if it's already been registered. And try to follow through with that one more time. So now I end it. I have to end it first. Thank you. All ballots have been received. Just hold 1 minute, please.
Drum roll.
My drum set's in the other room. Should I grab my sticks?
Thank you, Chair. So we have viewed the results and the CAO has verified that the vice chair for the Sunshine Coast Regional District for 2021 is Director Alton Toth.
Congratulations, Director Toth, now Vice Chair Toth, and thank you very much to Director Mcmahon for letting your name stand for Vice Chair. It's never easy to put your name forward in any position, so thank you so much for doing that. I guess that means you, Director McMahon, gets a meatier committee now.
I just wanted to say that I hadn't thought to pray for Lori Pratt, but you know, perhaps we should pray a little harder. So thank you, and thank you for everyone for supporting me in this. My family's going to be horrified.
So who texts and lets your wife know first? So anyways, okay. So with that, let's move on to our regular board meeting of November the 12th, 2020. We have been called to order, and we do have an amended agenda in front of us today. We had some last minute items added in from our Planning and Community Development Committee of earlier today. And you should have that within your sync folder. Before we go to adopt the amended agenda, are there any other items that directors or staff need to add on? Director Lee.
Yes, I'd like to add an item under new business. It's there's a TELUS request for letter of support for service enhancements in the Egmont Road area. I'd like to add that under new business.
Okay, so an item of new business, the TELUS letter of support for Egmont area.
Yes.
Looking at the other directors and staff, is there anything else to add in? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to ask for a motion to adopt this amended agenda. May I ask for a motion to adopt? Director Paul, seconded Director Ties. All those in favor? Thank you, motion carries. Next up on the next thing on our agenda, I guess, is the regular board meeting minutes of October 22nd, 2020. Annex A, pages 1 through 12 of our package. Are there, before we receive and adopt these minutes, are there any errors, omissions, additions, changes that need to be made? Seeing none, I'm going to ask for a motion to receive and adopt the minutes of October 22nd, 2020. So moved, Director Seeger, seconded Director Ties. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Is there any business arising from the minutes or unfinished business? Okay. I see no one jumping around, so I'm going to ask for next. We have no presentations or delegations today. We have a number of reports and communications to get through, so if I can ask for a motion to receive all reports and communications, please. So move Director Toth, seconded Director Seegers. All those in favor? Thank you, motion carries. First up, Annex B, pages 13 through 16 of your package is the Corporate and Administrative Services Committee recommendations, numbers 1, 3 to 4, 6 to 8, and 10 of October 22nd, 2020. Directors, before we adopt those recommendations as a whole, would you like to pull any from the block? Seeing none, I'm going to ask for a motion to adopt the recommendations from the Corporate and Administrative Services Committee of October 22nd, 2020. So move Director Seegers, seconded Director Toth. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you, motion carries. Next up is the 3A on the amended agenda, which is the Planning and Community Development Committee recommendations of earlier today, pages 16A and B of our package. Directors, do you wish to debate any of these separately before we adopt the block as a whole? Okay, I'm going to ask for a motion to adopt the recommendations as brought forward from earlier today. Director Seegers, thank you. Director Beamish, thank you. Any further discussion on these? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Next up, we have a series of communications, a lot of them from provincial ministries, and also from Mayor Beamish from the town of Gibsons. So I'm going to look to directors if there's any questions or comments you'd like to make on any of these communications. If you could raise your electronic hand, please, that would be most appreciated. I'm going to start with Director Ties.
I would like to speak in support of the resolution EB16 as amended, and I would like to if there's any sort of motion that needs to be made to communicate that on to the to UBCM, then that's what I would be moving.
Okay. So I'm going to look to our corporate officer and CEO and see what the process would be from here. Because we'd asked staff to follow up and see why our resolution had been pulled from the block. I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, corporate officer?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I think this is a matter of business. UBCM has reached out to let us know that, as they had previously indicated, this resolution would be forwarded to the executive. There is some description of the proposed amendment to the resolution, which essentially is bolded in the letter, with the addition of First Nations, both self-governing and non-self-governing nations. If there are comments you wish staff to share regarding that amendment, I would request a resolution, and we'll ensure that goes forward from the board.
Okay. Director Ties, that clarifies your question around there. You'd like to make a motion to...
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the amendments as presented, and that I guess that be communicated to the UBCM.
Okay. And do I have a seconder for that?
Second.
I see a seconder. Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none. Corporate officer, is that clear in our statement, or do you require additional information?
Thank you, Chair. That's sufficient.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I will call the question on this. All those in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Next up, I had Director Seegers and then Director Toth.
Sorry, I wanted to speak to the same thing that Director Ties did, so I'm good there. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at Annex D, the letter from the town of Gibsons about a multi-purpose room at the Gibsons pool. I'd like to know a little bit of background and Gibsons Council's thoughts on this, and yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go over to the Mayor of Gibsons, who's our newly appointed representative, who's returning back to the board here as a director. Director Beamish.
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations on your reelection. Thank you. I welcome the opportunity to speak to this. It came up during discussion at Council. We have just about $200,000 now in the Muro Haynes Trust and fund, and the question has risen by one of our council members is whether or not there were sufficient monies there yet, or what would be required in order to proceed with the development of an add-on, I guess, to the pool, which would be a multi-purpose room, something suitable for having birthday parties for children or other uses, maybe even some activities in. This was raised as being the purpose of the original gift back around 2006 or so, when Mrs. Haynes passed away and left what was at that time about $164,000, and with interest accumulated to over 200. We have actually provided the $5,000 for the pool upgrades come out of this trust, because it was intended for capital development of the pool, not for maintenance of the pool. And so that, but one of the things he specifically mentioned was a multi-purpose room. So that was council's request at that time. Is there sufficient there? The suggestion was that we should go ahead and get a quote, and my comment to that was it's not our property any longer for us to do that. So that so the request then comes to the regional district, is there's a possible to get estimates and see what would have to be added to that. And one never knows. Opportunities come along for funding, and it could see something materialize from that. If we knew what the cost was and how that could be developed on the site.
Okay, Thank you, Director Beamish. I'm going to go over to Director Seekers. I'm assuming you have a question or comment on this.
Yes, I seem to recall, wow, probably longer than that, probably 5 or 6 years ago, that there actually was a plan put together that showed a multi-purpose room. And that was, it would be at the regional district here. I'm not sure if staff are aware of that or know where they could put their hands on that, but there has been a plan put together. Because my question when I looked at this was, what size are you looking at? All those kinds of things. I think that work's already been done, and there is a blueprint or something around that could be used to potentially forward this conversation.
Okay. GM Hall, I hate to put you on the spot, but do you know of the report that Director Seekers has mentioned?
Sorry, I don't, Chair. It must predate my time with the regional district.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to go over to Director McMahon.
I'm just wondering if we're aware of demand for a multi-purpose room. I'm just thinking that, it's next door to the curling rink, which is used for quite a few events. And then, of course, our rec center just up the road has a lot of rooms, which I believe are underutilized. So building a room because there's $200,000 doesn't necessarily seem to be the best reason or most compelling reason.
Okay. Director Ties.
Yeah, it's always great to have such things for especially kids' birthdays. And I know that's where the Seashell Aquatic Center has a lot of their bookings in their multi-purpose room. But I am wondering, we are looking at an asset management plan with possible retirement dates for this facility. And I'm wondering if it may be a little bit premature to add to it when we may decide in a year or two that it will actually be torn down and rebuilt somewhere else or something of that sort. So, I think getting a quote might not be a bad idea, but I think ultimately the timing may not be ideal right now, I would think.
Director Toth, and then I'll go back to you, Director Beamish.
Thank you, Chair. I support looking at this in principle, recognizing the asset management and the future asset retirement obligations. That multi-purpose room at the Seashell Aquatic Facility, I can't count the number of birthday parties that my daughter's gone to at the pool because they've booked the room to use for cake and presents and games and what have you. So I can certainly see the appeal in it. And I think if you're having a birthday party, it doesn't make sense to swim at the pool and then go across the highway and go up the hill to the rec facility to use one of the rooms up there. If there is a plan somewhere on a shelf, I'd like to see that dusted off and us have a look at it to see if the scope of it still makes sense, and two, what sort of scale it looked at, because we could be talking about anything from 300 square feet to 3,000 square feet. And I know, I should say, I suspect the intention is probably on the lower side of that spectrum, but yeah, I'd be in favor of perhaps staff reporting back at a future PCD or something like that if they can find that report.
Okay, Director Beamish, and then I heard the start of a motion coming from Director Toth. So.
Yeah, I appreciate the conversation, and I also appreciate the comments earlier in last meeting relative to the timing of construction in terms of the cost of materials and the market at this time. But have that being said, if there is a previous plan to be looked at, that we welcome. Certainly the mover of this motion, Councillor Ladwig, was very conscious of having her two daughters, and she personalized it to say, how many birthday parties we could have had there, sort of thing. We had them out in the rain in the parking lot or something. So that was her thoughts, and I think that We have at this stage $200,000. The interest is going to continue to accumulate, and certainly would have to fit in with any plan to change, rebuild, demolish, rebuild that building in the future. So just something to bear in mind. I appreciate the general support for it.
Okay, Director McMahon?
Yeah, it just occurred to me that there was quite the long conversation on Facebook the other day about where you can go that's a sheltered outdoor area that meets COVID requirements, and there aren't any. We have a desperate lack of them on the Sunshine Coast. I was at a provincial park recently, and they had a big covered outdoor area with a wood stove in the middle and benches and tables, and it's just, when we're looking at a recreation facility, if there was something that was flexible, that where you could open up the space or whatever to meet COVID requirements, that might be a tremendous asset to the community, as we don't know how much longer we're going to be in this social isolation situation.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to Director Toth because I heard the start of a motion there, but I'd also like to be cognizant of staff work plan too. So I'm going to go to maybe the CAO first to comment, maybe with the senior leadership team on what would be, how you would best like to see this come to staff. There may be a report already there as referenced by Director Seegers. So CEO McKinley, you're mute. You need to turn your microphone on at your workstation.
My apologies. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay now. I was unmuting the wrong mic. We'll have to take a look and see what that other staff report said. I don't know when that was done or what it contained. And maybe a good first step is probably to just have a couple of conversations between SCRD staff and Town of Gibson staff to learn more about the gift, the intention behind it, take a look at the other report and see what types of options we might have moving forward.
Okay, so best option going forward then for a motion would be that staff, SCRD staff reach out to Town of Gibson staff regarding sorry, I just need to get the actual name of it.
Muriel Haynes Trust Fund.
The Muriel Haynes Trust Fund and potential uses for that fund. Is that sufficient?
I think I'd also like to tack on that staff investigate if there are expansion plans on file for the Gibsons and District Aquatic Facility.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm happy to move it.
Okay. So I see that as a motion, and I see that Director McMahon has seconded. Corporate officer, is that clear?
Thank you, Chair. May I, one point of clarification with the second and that, is the request to bring that plan forward if we do find one, and that we explore existing expansion plans, but do they need to be brought forward if we do find something?
Director Toth?
I think at this point, if they're brought forward for the purpose of the conversation between the two governments, that might be the start of the way forward. We can look at bringing it to a PCD or something like that further down the road if pertinent.
Thank you. That's good.
Okay. Does that fit everyone there? Director Beamish, that works for you too and serves the needs of your council? Okay.
I will relate that to them.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay, so is everyone clear on the motion that is on the floor? I have no more speakers list, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Are there any other questions or business arising from the correspondence that has been provided to us? Much of this correspondence came from the ministries because we had actually followed up on our ministry conversations, and then they replied back to us. So that's great. A lot of letters back. Directors, any questions on anything? Or does the staff team have any comments or questions that they have on any of the items that came forward? Okay, I don't see any more hands up, but I would like to say that it's really neat to have a letter from the Deputy Solicitor General that does reference the governments on the coast as a whole. So that was nice to see, because we certainly tried to approach everything as a Team Sunshine Coast. So. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions or concerns on any of the communications. Oh, Director Hiltz.
Yes, yes, thanks, Chair. I did have a question about the RCMP business plan that was on the letter from the Deputy Solicitor General. So, does anyone know who submits this business plan? Like, because there is a. Yeah. Okay.
I think Director Seegers can answer that because she has a close relationship with our staff sergeant. Director Seegers?
So staff actually get a request each year, and we are to send in preliminary requests, which are then subject to budget and then finalized in April of the following year. So we were having these conversations with the RCMP. Once staff actually recognized that the RCMP was indicating we would potentially be looking for additional staff, they brought it forward to our council to put in our preliminary request for this. So it came to them subsequent to this letter and to our request. So it's been submitted.
Okay. Director Seegers, was that the only thing you had your hand up for, or was there anything else? Okay, great. Okay. Anything else? Director Hiltz, I'm assuming that answers your question. Okay. Okay, so with that, we'll move past communications. I'm not seeing anybody jumping up. So we will move past communications. We have no motions coming forward. However, we do have a bylaw, and it is on Annex J, page 29 to 30 of the package. And we are looking for adoption of this bylaw at this time. The voting is for the rural areas and the Sechelt Indian Government District. The voting, it is a weighted vote, and the voting is put out there on your agenda package. So we're looking for adoption of Sunshine Coast Regional District Building Amendment Bylaw number 687.3 2020. Rural Directors or SIGD, may I have a motion to adopt, please? So moved, Director Tighe, seconded Director Paul. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Wonderful. Motion carries. Next up, we have our directors' reports. I'll lead off the directors' reports, and I'm going to start off with a thank you to Director Seegers, also known as the Mayor, Her Worship, the Mayor of District of Sechelt. Thank you so much for your leadership in the Vice Chair position for the last 2 years. It's been much appreciated, and really appreciated having you here at my side, as virtually and non-virtually when times allow. And just a round of applause for Director Seegers. And thank you so much for being here at the Regional District. It's been a busy couple of weeks with with things. Yesterday was Remembrance Day. I was at the Seashell Legion, physically distanced to lay a wreath on behalf of the Sunshine Coast Regional District. It was a very small yet very poignant ceremony that was live streamed by the Legion and was also recorded by Coast Cable, or also known as Eastlink, so you can watch it there. The day before, on November 10th, along with members of our senior leadership team and Mayor Seegers on behalf of the District of Seychelles, and I know there was a member of the town of Gibson's because they were in meeting, but we had a joint call with mayors and chairs of the Fraser Health and Vancouver Coastal Health regions to discuss the issues and the communication and things coming up around the provincial health orders relating to our region. We had Minister Selena Robinson, who is Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Minister Adrian Dix, Minister of Health. We had our Solicitor General, Minister Mike Farnworth, and the celebrity in the crowd, Dr. Bonnie Henry. So we were able to actually ask direct questions, and it was a good, informative session. And just talking about the health orders in relation to our region, I did bring up the concerns that we had around communication. Because it was not clear to our region if we were part or weren't part or were part of the health order. We were told that ministry staff will be reaching out to us directly on the Sunshine Coast to discuss further issues for our region. And it was a good meeting. It was very long, but it was really well attended and a lot of thoughtful comments. So just in particular around the health orders. So I'll send a quick synopsis out, but just verbally, it is things like no team travel outside or in or out of our region. Spectators for outdoor activities even are being asked to socially distance, and asking everyone to really take a step back and look at their practices either personally or within their businesses. So there's further details now, and I'm sure there's be more details coming forward, but these health orders are in effect till November 23rd. It's a bit disappointing, the timing. I mean, it's understandable with the numbers, because we had originally planned to actually have this meeting, all directors attending in person at Field Road. And so we have to take a step back and make sure everybody is being safe, reevaluate our plans, and go forward. So that's really all I have for my report today. So I am going to start on the top left of my screen for directors. So this is going to be maybe a little scary for some of you, but the top left of my screen has Director Seegers.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for the acknowledgement. It's been a busy 2 years, and I'm looking at stepping away from the vice chair position, as you indicated, to give a little more attention to the District of Seychelles. Lots of things happening. Also, what's happened during the last while, as you know, is I've taken on a position with the Iced Tea Board. So I'm on the Iced Tea Board there. So we've actually had a Board of Directors meeting in the last while. And we've got, I believe it's in the next 2 weeks, we have the other meeting that Mayor Beamish and Chair Pratt will be attending as well. They've started ramping up the elected officials meetings. Again, we're doing them bi-weekly now, and the Vancouver Coastal Health meetings we're doing weekly. Lucy McKiernan, who was the constituency assistant for MP Patrick Weiler, has retired, and in her place, Donna Bell, who some of you have known over time. Donna Bell has stepped up and she is now our new constituency representative. So reach out to her if you have any questions or concerns. Chair and Vice Chair had a meeting with the Chair and Vice Chair of the School District 46. We have those occasionally, great conversations. They've had turnover there, as you know as well. I had the privilege to attend a conference called the Smart Cities Conference. So it was a 3-day conference, and there were a few takeaways. One is, when we look at IT in government, we tend to look at IT supporting internal operations. So how do we support our directors? How do we support our staff to do the job they need to do? But we seem to forget a lot of times our external constituents, our external users. So what is happening? A few years back, the provincial government here in BC talked about an open data platform. So that was making more information available to residents, etc. Well, it's gone a step further. They've now come out with an open international standard for creating a data catalog. So it's saying we have data. There are people and organizations and businesses and individuals who would like to have access to that data. So by actually adopting an open international standard for that data and that data catalog, we can actually share between data partners, local governments, application developers, citizens. So for example, I've reached out to them just in the last couple of days because I want some Canadian examples. But what they were showing us in this conference, because it was a global conference, lot mostly focused on the US, but what they have down there is they have a platform that as an individual, you can go and pay your state taxes, your state bills, your local municipal bills, your regional bills, all in one place. So it's looking at creating the data in a standard format where you then put the onus on the service, the software providers to meet your data requirements. So it's doing a little bit of flipping there. But if you think about it here, it would allow for collaboration on the Sunshine Coast if we all had the same data. Some of the things that we're talking about is, I can remember Director Mcmahon talking about the fact that we don't have labor data on the Sunshine Coast. If all of us had our information in the same format, somebody who was interested in that, perhaps Greedo, could work with somebody to amalgamate that data. That's the kind of stuff it allows for. So I'm raising it just to bring it to consciousness for all of you so that as we go forward, rather than a software provider dictating to us what their software can do for us or not, we can say, here is our data. What can you do for us? So it was interesting conversation. It was interesting to see that Shaw from Calgary is part of that as well. So I'm also reaching out to them to get some Canadian examples so we have some more information. I want to acknowledge Councillor Director Toth for setting up the Carbon Engineering Virtual Tour. I found it fascinating. I'd heard about it, but didn't really know how it worked. And it was really cool to see how it worked and how it's very, very much almost self-sufficient. It just, you add very little each time. They keep reusing the same inputs. That was really good. I attended the WASAC meeting. First one I've ever attended. I want to see how the committee worked. Great group of people, very vocal, love it. I also attended the Remembrance Day Service, and I attended the Elphinstone Community Association session last night, the First Nations 101. Thank you for the invitation. It was really good. Recently, I spent about 10 days out in Calgary. It was one of my son's birthdays. So I went out there. It was interesting because I have a grandson who's 9 who plays hockey. And throughout the city, some of the arenas are open. Some of them allow people to come and watch. Many of them don't. So during the week, he had 3 or 4 different sessions we were allowed to go to one. And the protocols were such that we could not enter the facility until the participants and the people watching left from the previous game. So instead of 1 hour segment blocks, they have like 45 minutes on the ice. And then it's all, we had to stand outside. We were not allowed into the building until a certain time. So there's protocols, and people are pretty forgiving, in following them. So kudos to staff, because I know that that's difficult to manage. That's it. I'm done. Thank you.
Speakers out. Next up, I have Director and newly minted Vice Chair Toth.
Thank you, Chair. No, it's really fun that you've mentioned Donna Bell. She was originally one of my running mates back in the early parts of 2018. So I'm excited for her to be taking on that position with Patrick. I spoke to her last weekend at work, and she's really excited for it too. So with regards to tours and putting things on, it looks like our solar tour is probably going to be canceled until the spring. Physical distancing and now decreasing sunlight and increasing rainfall. It is what it is, though I'm happy to arrange trips with smaller groups who want to just pop up there. I've been not a ton going on with the district of Sechelt. As was reported in the news, council voted to drop Santa from the roof, which I thought was a cute headline, but it turned out to be a fairly controversial issue. And despite that cheeky headline, I think us revisiting it was sort of the best idea. Looking forward to seeing where budgeting for the district of Sechelt here heads in the next couple months. But it's getting to be quite clear that there's going to continue to be less travel and more electronic meetings. We just got notification that AVICC has been canceled. So that's, savings on our travel budget, if nothing else. I've been looking at a new time management tool that actually allows members of the public to just book meetings with me based on my calendar availability, and I don't have to get involved with it. It's pretty cool as a workflow tool. I'm happy to share that with the other directors because it does tie into our other calendars as well. Last comments is that this continued virtual environment is getting to be a bit of a drag, but here we are. I was looking forward to getting into the office, even if it was just for one day, but we're going to have to wait at least another week or two for that, if ever. And yeah, that's really all I have to report today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up on my list, I have Director Mcmahon, please.
I seem to have seen a lot of all of you lately, but it actually was October 22nd that we last gave our director's reports. It seems weirdly a long time ago. By the way, I've decided to invent a new word because we need one. It's unprecedenteder, just so that we can, use that. Fire Commission. Met with the Fire Commission, went to the House Sound Forum, went to a couple of stops on the Arts Crawl, attended a number of Climate Caucus meetings in different groups, including the one about heat pumps, which I now know more about than I possibly wanted to. Dropped in on Wasak, attended the Trail Society AGM, watched the credit union's rebound presentation on the economic development, which was actually interesting this year because COVID made it really different. And I was not able to attend the AVICC Resilience Summit, but I sent my alternate, Jason, and he reported last night to the Howe Sound Community Association on his experience there. And attended the Scredo meeting, met with TRAC about active transportation priorities given the future of gas tax funding. And of course, I was at the Elphinstone Community Association meeting last night, where the guest speaker was Linda Gray, author of First Nations 101. And she gave us about a half-hour talk. I had been intending to ask her, because the book was written almost 10 years ago now, what changed or since she wrote it, but it turns out she's writing a new edition. So that is going to probably address all of those questions. If you're interested in learning more, her website is firstnations101.com. And I think I'll leave it there for right now. Thanks.
Thank you, Director McMahon. Next up, I have Director Paul. Over to you, sir.
Hello, all. Sorry I missed the fun-filled morning event. Had other fish to fry. We had our AGM, our very first virtual AGM in the last week, and it came off rather well. We had membership from Lower Mainland who normally don't attend these little gatherings and soirees, and they had a lot of interesting questions to put to us, and it was good. It was very good, and the sense of it now is that as we go forward, there will be no more meetings that don't have that component added into it, because now that we've got that ability to reach out and not have to have them come all the way over here and essentially spend 3 days to get in 1 2-hour meeting, it makes a lot of sense to do it this way. So I think that went off rather well. The staff were very, very well managed, and it was a fun-filled event that we ended the meeting, I think, 2 minutes later than we should have. So kudos to the person that we had MC it, kept everybody on track. Through the beginning of the school year, we got into a process of about 40% of our kids did not, and the parents really did want to send their kids back to school, given some of the concerns that were raised with regards to COVID, social distancing, masks, all that stuff. So we went through the process of devising what we call learning circles. And those learning circles have come off swimmingly. And we seem to have hit a real mark with the kids, because in actual fact, the circles you're down to about 9 or 10 kids, rather than the usual 20 or 30 that you have in a classroom. So the kids enjoy it quite well. So I think we found ourselves a new venue. We're trying to coerce SD46 to try and get us a few more teachers to help go through this process, and it's going along rather well. Everybody's having a fun discourse on how this all rolls out. It's something new, it's shiny. Everybody's having a great conversation around it. Other than that, it's been more of the same. It's like the email from the CAO. Everything that we did, we had to undo on Monday. So there was a whole lot of scrambling to undo what we thought we had more or less figured out, and now everybody's scrambling to get back to where we were. I think that's about all I have to really report out on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Paul. Next up on my list, I have Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad you put me down the list, because I got it all scribbled down now. I had a little bit of good news to report from us. The 3 cars that we'd identified that were parked at Whiskey Slough and have been there for years actually have been towed away. And the towing was paid for by Modi. And it's thanks to my alternate, Marianne Becky, and one of our APC members, Catherine McEachran, and Colin from Modi and Philip from the RCMP. They got together and figured out how to make the process work. And so it's done now. And I must say the Harbour Authority is very happy to see them gone from their parking spots. I attended Remembrance Day at our Legion, and I have to thank Darnelda for getting clarity from the VCH that we could attend. It was very hard to get information out of the officials, but Darnelda did that through her relationships. So thank you, Darnelda. And actually getting that actually kickstarted the event again because they were busy actually going to turn it off. So, and thanks to the RCMP, they provided a color guard for us, and all the rules were followed. We had 6 foot distance and still masks on, so we more than complied. And I got to say, I guess it's age, but 1 hour standing still seems like an awful long time to me. My legs hurt after. The Lawn Border event, we actually had one here a weekend or so ago. And it actually went very well in spite of a lot of calls from local residents about doom and gloom predictions. But it didn't happen. There was less than 50 total in the downhill event, all outside, all spaced. They kept it quite secret, and they also made it clear they didn't want observers. And so there was just a couple of local residents. The participants come from off coast and didn't mingle with the local people. And they actually all stayed in an Egmont campsite. And the RCMP actually were very tolerant and helpful. But they did visit the campsite and they did visit the site to make sure they were followed, which I thought was quite good. And from what I learned about it is to make sure I touch bases with the RCMP when I learn of things like this, even if it is informally, because it never was formally announced. But, reading Facebook and talking to locals, I knew it was going to happen. And I had assumed the RCMP had been talked to about it, but it wasn't so. They didn't know until the Thursday before the event and had to scramble to make sure everything happened. So I learned something from that, and that is don't assume. Touch bases with the people to make sure it happens properly. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lee. Next up, I have Director Ties, please.
Thank you, Chair. Not a ton to report. I'm still always grateful for Director Mcmahon representing our board on many places and on many occasions, and of course Director Seegers and Director Pratt as well, and the other ones occasionally as well. But yeah, the WASAC is doing a fine job. I think Director Hills mentioned that it's storming, so that comes out of the forming, storming, norming, and performing before adjourning acronym, or whatever you call it. And so yeah, it's truly in the storming stage right now, and I think that it's doing well. Thank you to Director Toth for organizing the virtual tour of the carbon facility. That was great. I have had a chat with some folks in the creek who are interested in getting a gazebo built on the end of the Roberts Creek Pier, sort of as a place to hang out and just enjoy and sit down, even in all weather, but also as sort of a outdoor classroom potential for Roberts Creek Elementary, where they could sort of put their backpacks down and then go and explore some of the shoreline and turn over rocks and find critters. And I also endeavored to put down my thoughts about budget in a new blog entry that I've put up on my website, and if you haven't seen it yet, then I will put a reminder of it in my next newsletter, which will be coming out beginning of next month. But yeah, just some thoughts around budget, but I won't go into detail at this point. That's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Ties. Next up, I have Director Hills. And then Director Beamish, you're on deck for the last.
Thanks, Chair. Okay, I'll start back at October 23rd, and I agree with Director McMahon. October 23rd seems like a month or 2 months ago. There is something about that, yeah. So there was about 60 people attend that. It was an all virtual meeting, 2 hours around the sound and less than an hour at times. The key aspects of that was that the How Sound Al Kitsum Biosphere Initiative has moved forward another step, which is past the Canadian hurdle, and now it's on to UNESCO in Paris, and could be a decision in the fourth quarter of 2021 about that designation. One of the interesting things that happens at the forum is we've been doing this word cloud situation where every elected gets to say 3 words about how they're feeling. And the most recent word cloud kind of was adapting. And I think this is adapting and adaptation. Grateful was there again, and busy. Everyone is busy. There's no one who's saying that their workload has gone down in the last while. That's pretty united. So that's, and there will be, out of the How Sound Community Forum has come a resolution recommended for, or suggested for local governments. It's the town of Gibson's is putting, it's on their agenda. I think this week or next week, I saw it in one of the updates from the town of Gibson's. It's about taking the Ocean Watch Task Force, make it become an Ocean Watch Action Committee, which sits underneath of the biosphere, which is kind of a management unit for that initiative. So it's coming forth. The Langdale Pact did this, sponsored a thing called Reversing the Trend of the Backseat Generation, which is how to have children be more independently mobile within their communities. And interesting discussion from academics, and they said that there's 3 reasons why parents don't let their children out. Because of the parents' fear and anxiety of getting injured. That's one of the biggest ones. The other ones are transportation infrastructure. And the third one, which is the most surprising, is fear of being reported to social services as a bad parent. Just for reference, if you want to follow that up, there was a case in Vancouver, 2018, appeal to 2020, Adrian Crook, about his kids on a bus. Just for the record, it's safer for your children to walk than it is to be in a car. Just to let you know, that's what the stats say. The other thing I guess is the adaptation. I'd done 5 bookings at Granthams Hall to kind of open up to the public, because the public really hasn't been in there. And we got in 2.5 kind of bookings, and then the new orders came in and we all adjusted. So I might still have 1 left in December. We'll see how that goes. But it's reflected in that the West Howe Sound Community Association was going to do an in-person. Derek Cardinal changed last minute. They had their first ever Zoom meeting for the community association, and they're essentially putting their general meetings into hiatus until April. They're just feeling that the capacity to try to do anything at this point is beyond them. So I think that's the adaptation, and waiting for 2021 as being a brighter year than 2020, I think, is what people are get through the winter, hunker down, and then come back roaring in the spring. That seems what people seem to be saying. So I think that's enough. That's enough for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hiltz. And last but not least, Director Beamish, over to you. You need to unmute yourself first, though, because otherwise your report's going to be really short.
That's right. It's nice to be last sometimes. I can hear how busy other people are being, and then I can start patting my own busyness. Remembrance Day, we also had one here in Gibson's, and it was a very good service. Councillor Kroll represented the SCRD. I represented the town of Gibson's. They had about 40 chairs laid out. We didn't have to stand for the full time. Very appreciative of that. But it's a very good service, and nice to see people. But nice also to see when they call out the different veterans representing the different wars, the different activities that Canada has been involved in. You really do get the appreciation of Canada as an international community. You know, everywhere from Burma, Vietnam, UN peacekeepers, Afghanistan, all had representatives coming forward to lay wreaths. And that was very, very interesting to see that. And And I don't know that our community, our young people appreciate that scope of international participation. We had a strategic plan review earlier this week with council, where we met and we talked about what we have done and where we want to go now for the next 2 years. And we will be doing some reporting on that and actually following up with a second session, because what we didn't get a chance to do is take on the very big issue of climate change in that conversation. So we'll be having a second session just focusing on climate change issues. Our Source to Sea project is going to be starting on Friday, November the 20th. I'm not on the committee, but I've asked to be for the link to that initial meeting, just so that I can be appraised of who is on the committee and the scope of it, because it's kind of Manny's made a lot of effort to make invitations to people coast-wide, not just strictly Gibson's, so that if anybody is interested simply in observing that first committee meeting, talking about getting an understanding more of what the purpose of that project is. Basically, in a nutshell, it's to go up to Mount Alphastone and work our way down and see what the natural assets are and how they are contributing to our community and other communities, because it involves not only just the aquifer, but involves stormwater management and tree management and all sorts of different aspects of and wildlife. What is being supported in terms of wildlife? We have representatives from the Bear Alliance on that committee for that purpose, taking a look at different things. So I think that'll be very interesting going forward. Council did reappoint me this past week to the board as the representative, and Councillor Crowell will continue on as the alternate, kind of a tag team. And we're doing that. Councillor Crowell is going to be taking on other duties as well with the town. We have a new student appointed to council. I'm not going to be the one making that announcement right now. It'll be announced at the council meeting next week, and she will be welcomed. The new Elphinstone School, she'll be a grade 11 student, as we've talked about in the past. Our intention is always to have a grade 11 and a grade 12 student on the council, so that they would be that continuity going forward. So very excited about that. Past 2 weeks, I've moved house. I'm still living out of boxes, fewer boxes. Lots are going to recycling, but it's a big job, and even made bigger when you get older, I tell you that. Still looking for a stove. If anybody has a stove sitting around their basement, we did get one. We got one from the Restore, but it had too many bells and whistles on it. The electricity here couldn't handle it. So we'll see. And finally, I've recognized staff time management is very important. I don't challenge it when staff members inform me that they're off for the day, they're working from home, they're not available, sort of thing. At this point in time, they're grown-ups, they're professionals, and they're able to make those decisions for themselves, managing their own stress. I think it's very important that we just give them that freedom to do that, as long as they're there when it counts. I think that's very important. So I'm finding, whether it's our corporate officer or CIO or treasurer or whoever it happens to be at the time, they're taking a couple of days off. That's fine with me. That I know they're working. I know that we're all working extra time. And the COVID is prominent in our town, in the sense of recognizing it. We have, as you're maybe aware, gone to mask only in all government, municipal government buildings in town, so that our staff wear masks, and except when they're in their private places or offices. And we request the public to wear masks when they come in. We will provide them with a mask. And so far, we've only had one person who has challenged, refused that, and attempt to refuse it. He did, in the end, agree to wear a mask, but he's the only person that's kind of raised that as an issue. And but we will always find that. We have many other ways of delivering services. You don't have to do them all in person, and very few you have to do in person. So that we have that opportunity. So we are, at least for the foreseeable future, a masked men and women in our community. So thank you, and that's all I have to report.
Thank you very much, Director Beamish. Okay, so that is leads us to the end of our director's reports. Next up on our agenda, we have an item of new business. Director Lee, regarding the TELUS letter of support. You are muted currently, Director Lee. There you go.
Thank you, Chair. There was, TELUS has asked the SCRD to provide a letter of support for a grant they're applying. The SCRD hasn't yet considered the matter of zoning conformance in this case. It's a tower to go up on Egmont Road near North Lake, and it'll fill in the gaps of cell service so that there will not be any gaps on the road to Egmont, which is really good because we have the school bus traveling that road regularly. And also the residents around North Lake have intermittent cell service. Now, the SCRD will be considering the matter of zoning conformance in December, but it has went to the RAPC and they're supportive. And I believe our staff really sees no issues with sending the appropriate letter. So I'd like to make a motion that a letter of support be provided to TELUS's application to the BC Economic Recovery Program for service enhancements in the Egmont Road area, and that SCRD's support for the project is subject to forthcoming planning review and approval by the SCRD board, and that TELUS be requested to address any Seychelles Nation archaeological or environmental concerns.
Okay. Thank you, Director Lee. I see that seconded by Director Toth. Is there any discussion on this or any comment from directors or from staff on this item? I think the two and that's covers off our typical, I'm assuming this, Director Lee, you had some assistance with this as well?
Sure.
It sounds vaguely familiar. I recognize some of our senior leadership team's work in that. Director Seegers?
Could we just indicate by when they need this letter? So I think that's, so staff are aware. I'm not sure if they are.
It needs to go out right away. It's like Monday.
And a date. Sorry, Director Lee, when is it due?
I think it's due Monday. So I don't know if it can go out today, but tomorrow.
CAO? Oh, wrong microphone, sir.
Once again, we'll work on getting something out tomorrow. I believe they need it either end of day tomorrow or for Monday.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments on this? See none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Thank you, motion carries. Okay, so with that, thank you, Director Lee, for bringing that up, that item of new business. Oh, we just lost our last member of the public. So anyways, we will be going in camera. So I'd like a motion that the public be excluded from attendance at the meeting in accordance with sections 91C, E, K, and 92B of the Community Charter. So moved, Director Seegers, seconded Director Mcmahon. All those in favor? Motion carries. Did we have any notes from our attendees? Or any before she left us? We had Connie here for the longest time. And Donna, the chandelier has always been there. You've just noticed it now. Because I'm standing up, so it's usually just above my head. Nothing in chat. If we get through closed fast enough, then Len can go to the flower shop for his anniversary. How many years is it, Len?
49.
Congratulations. Yes, you need to get flowers.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to give everybody just a moment. We have a very And welcome back to the regularly scheduled board meeting of November 12th, 2020. If you're still with us, you've returned just in time for us to adjourn. So, directors, may I ask for a motion to adjourn, please? So moved, Director Seegers, seconded Director Ties. All those in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Until we meet again, folks, thank you so much for joining us today.